I had to stay up for the whole thing. Of course, I'm talking about the Nets against the Bulls. The Nets had something to prove, as they haven't been playing great lately. They played well last night. Kyrie, James, KD, all on the floor at the same time. Did they prove something to you last night?
Now I'm going to show you how the East Coast rocks. They didn't necessarily prove anything to me last night because once Kyrie returned as a partial player, they became my favorite to win the conference. The East has been a revolving door, kind of like when Michael Jordan retired. I remember in '98 losing to them in the conference finals, and then him retiring a couple years later, and then the East was a revolving door. Pacers made the finals, the Sixers made the finals. Like, it was a revolving door. That happened with the East when LeBron left. You saw Toronto go on and win the championship. Mm-hmm. You saw Miami win the East. You saw the Bucks win the championship. I think this is the chance and will be the opportunity for the Nets to do so. And you're going to have a lot of conversation about this game. My most important point is James Harden.
Yep.
Like I've been telling everyone, he seemed to be disinterested in many scenarios this season. And I know people hear me say that and then look at his stats and be like, wait a minute, he averages such and such and such and such. I know what I'm looking at. I saw the ball go in the backcourt in Detroit and it roll in front of his feet and somebody pick it up and go dunk it. I know what I'm looking at. Last night, what I was looking at is an interested, a happy, an engaged James Harden. Those 16 assists and the points. By the way, Kyrie, 9 points.
He didn't play great.
9 points.
He didn't play great.
Right?
He didn't have a bucket until like the late in the second quarter.
And there are going to be so many people that acknowledge Brooklyn playing D. They didn't win this game playing D. You see how many points they scored? Look how many points they scored.
138 points.
That's why they won. And so, like I told you yesterday, they look to me like a team that goes into a locker room and writes 125 on the board. Remember, I played for Mike D'Antoni. I played with Steve Nash. I played with Sean Marks. I know what this is. If we get to this number, we're going to win.
And they did.
They got to that number.
I'm glad you brought up James because it was really the passing last night that I found so impressive. And sharp, the way he got sharp involved. And it seemed like he was more like the Rockets' James Harden than I've seen since he's been in a Nets uniform. And there's something really interesting about the Kyrie situation. It's great to have him on the road.
Yep.
There's a scenario in which the Nets franchise could pay a small fine to the city, something like $5,000 for him to play home games. Now, I don't think the money's standing in the way of them doing this, but is it the ethics and the morals and the stance and their pro-vaccination feelings that could stand in the way of this?
Well, what it is you continue to open Pandora's box for a guy that's a talented basketball player. Because if he was the 15th man on the roster, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, no.
Right? But we know if he's healthy, they got a legitimate chance not only to win the East, but win the championship. And the reason why I made sure I pointed out Harden's play prior is because he has a player out after this year. Like, people look at this big three like it's forever. This is its third season. They've only played 16 games. KD's the only one signed beyond next year. So the sense of urgency and the time is right now. And so a player like Kyrie helps take you there. So if you're the ownership, do you now cave on everything you believe in?
They've already halfway caved.
Put your chips in the middle of the table like most people do in sports and say, you know what, I'll take Antonio Brown if he's going to help me win the Super Bowl. That's what happens in sports. I don't think the Nets ownership as of today is going to do that.
But would you do it for the playoffs?
But for the playoffs,
maybe the surge is over and like they relaxed a little bit about COVID, and maybe in the playoffs, I could see it happen.
I'm going to tell you something else. I don't believe whatever they do, if they do pay that fine, this is going to be the only year for that. So let me just tell y'all this.
The last year for the Big Three.
This is what I think. This is going to be the only year for the Nets allowing Kyrie to be a part-time player if the rules in New York don't change.
If the rules in New York don't change by next season, I'm going to Mars. I'm moving to the space station.
So if that's the case, and you're the Nets, you've allowed him to be a part-time player, you might as well pay the fine and go through this season. But trust me, I believe once the draft happens, you're going to look at the bottom of the ticker And it's going to be like, the Nets ain't allowing Kyrie to be a part-time player next year.
We can't speculate on the future of this
That's what
pandemic.
I think.
You know what I mean? We can't
That's
speculate
what I
on the future of the
believe.
pandemic. I thought this was going to last for 2 weeks, and here we are 2 years later. But I have a very quick question. Is this the last year the big three are in Brooklyn?
No.
Great to hear.
After everything I just said, no. I think they find a way to get it together. I think they came for a mission. Think about it. KD left the Warriors. You know what I'm saying? And they reinvented themselves without him. James Harden basically quit on the Rockets to get traded. Like, they need this to work, and I think it will work starting this season.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.